Clippers are the biggest disappointment of the 2020 playoffs, and no matter what happens now, I think that's going to stay. All right, they massively underperformed, blowing a 3-1 lead to the Nuggets, and as much as I pray that the Lakers are going to do the same thing, I don't believe they will. I believe the Lakers are going to pull out this series. Even if it takes 7 games, I would be very surprised if they blow a 3-1 lead like the Clippers did. And all props to the Nuggets, they played amazing, but realistically, the Clippers beat themselves more than the Nuggets beat them. Okay? They choked hard. Game 7, atrocious performances from Kawhi, Paul George, and Lou Williams. Game 5 and 6, atrocious performances from everyone except Kawhi Leonard. And I think Kawhi's getting too much hate. All right, I may make a video on Kawhi specifically later, but in game 5 he had like 36, 37 points on good efficiency, and in game 6 I want to say he had like 25 points and almost a triple double. Okay, he played great in all those games except game 7. And don't get me wrong, it was still a choke job, okay? There was no excuse for Kawhi Leonard, who many people, including myself, thought was the best player in the NBA, to have 14 points on like 20 shots in Game 7. But as a whole, he was not the big issue for the Clippers, okay? The Clippers had, I would say, 3 big issues, all right? Underperformances by Lou Williams, Paul George, and Montrezl Harrell. Now, Montrezl Harrell gets a little bit of an excuse because he was coming back from an injury, I believe, and he was kind of rusty coming into the bubble. Lou Williams, the man's only job is to score. That's all he does in the NBA. That's why he's won his 6 Man of the Year votes, because he's a great scorer. And he wasn't being a good scorer these playoffs. He was not. He was inefficient. He wasn't averaging his normal 20 points a game. He was just straight up bad. You know, if Lou Williams is not scoring efficiently, he's basically Trey Burke. And as much as some Sixers fans love to suck Trey Burke's dick these days just because Brett Brown chose Raul Neto over him, Trey Burke is not very good, okay? He's not a good player. Paul George, what a joke. I don't think any player has fallen as hard as Paul George out of nowhere in the last 10 years in the league. Okay, now I know he had some big injuries, but he came back and he seemed to be healthy and he was still young. And he just went from someone who looked like he was going to be a top 5 player in the league in a few years when he was on the Pacers. And then he had that horrible leg injury, which, I mean, it's impressive that he came back from it, but he has just been so bad. And like he'll have these good stretches in the regular season, like last year with the Thunder. He was third in the MVP race, and deservingly so. And then the playoffs, he crapped the bed. This year, he was bad all season, and then he really crapped the bed in the playoffs. All right, he had a couple good games here and there, but as a whole, he was inefficient. He was turning the ball over, bricking threes off the side of the backboard. Like, come on, man. You're supposed to be one of the 10 best players in the NBA. You were supposed to be the second superstar on this team. No wonder Kawhi played bad in Game 7. His back was probably killing him from carrying you all year. That's why he needed load management. All right, so players underperforming was bad. And then the other 2 issues with this team are combined, and that is Doc Rivers' coaching and the fact that the team does not have a good playmaker. Okay, the best playmaker on this team this season was Kawhi Leonard. Now, big props to him. Again, he's improved his game throughout his career. He was garbage. Okay, he averaged like, I should say, he was garbage at playmaking as of a few years ago. Okay, on the Spurs, I want to say he averaged like 3 assists a game. This year, he had a career high of, I believe, a little over 5. And, you know, he did a great job, but Kawhi Leonard is not a point guard, okay? He's not a point forward like LeBron. He's not a natural passer playmaker, okay? That's not his job. Patrick Beverley and Lou Williams are both niche guys. Pat Bev plays very good defense, even if not good enough for a Defensive Player of the Year vote. I can't believe someone gave him one. And Lou Williams is a scorer, okay? Neither of them are great passers. Neither of them are guys who should be running an offense. And Doc Rivers is not a great coach either, okay? I think this year was the nail in the coffin. He's not good enough at making adjustments, Okay, he does some dumb things his entire offense this season, and it was partially because the team didn't have a real good point guard, was give the ball to Kawhi, give the ball to Paul George, give the ball to Lou Williams sometimes. And that was his entire game plan this season. Okay? It looked like people have said it looked like the Thunder with Scott Brooks when they had Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant, and I think they're exactly right. That's exactly what it looked like. Okay, except normally Paul George didn't brick quite as many open shots as Russell Westbrook does. So they should have fired Doc Rivers, in my opinion, but if they didn't, that's okay. But now there's talks about locker room issues with Paul George and how other teammates don't like his special treatment. And man, I can't blame him. He played like poop. I could have gone out there and played better than Paul George some of those games. He was atrocious. Okay? I'll tell you, I wouldn't be hitting this. I'm not saying that I'd be, great or anything, but I wouldn't be hitting the side of the backboard on a wide open three in the playoffs. All right? Even I'm not that bad, and yet here Paul George is doing that. Absolutely pathetic performance by him this season and especially in the playoffs. And now the Clippers might have to trade him. They traded their entire future for him, and now they might have to trade him for someone else. It's not looking good for this franchise. I really do feel bad. I feel bad for Kawhi, and I feel bad for anyone who is a Clippers fan, was a Clippers fan before this season when I'm sure they got a bunch of bandwagoners. What a rough franchise to be a fan of. I can't think of anywhere worse except maybe the Knicks. I mean, you guys landed the dreamboat with Kawhi and Paul George, and it might be gone in a year because Kawhi and Paul George, looking at the contracts for this team, Kawhi and Paul George are only under contract next season, and then 2020, 2020, or 2021, 2022, that year is a player option for both of them. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if they take it, especially Paul George, because I don't know if anyone else is going to give him the full max if he keeps playing like kind of underperforming. And also, it is Los Angeles. Even if it's the Clippers, I wouldn't be surprised if they want to stay in LA. But they could leave if they have another second round exit next season. They at least need to make the conference finals, okay? Montrezl Harrell, I don't know if he's going to stay with the team this year. His contract is up now. And if I'm the Clippers, I don't know if I want to keep him. He's great off the bench, but he's not a very good defender. And some people think he's a great defender, and I don't understand why. Because when I watch him play, he has great hustle, don't get me wrong, but like actual defensive IQ, he's not very good. Zubac was definitely better than him defending Jokic these playoffs, and Zubac thankfully is under contract for a while. I think he's one of they've got a couple young guys. Zubac is going to have a bright future. Landry Shamet, man, I miss him being on the Sixers. He's fantastic, all right? But Lou Williams is only under contract next season, and Kawhi and Paul George could both choose to decline their contracts after next season. So if the Clippers do not get it together this upcoming season and at least make the Western Conference Finals and have a competitive series against whoever they play there, I would be very surprised if Kawhi and Paul George both stay. They could be in trouble. This team has no future. They're looking like the Brooklyn Nets when they traded for Pierce and Kevin Garnett, okay? But I don't know if this franchise has what it takes to turn it around as well as the Nets did. So, if you're a Clippers fan, I'm really hoping that the team does better next year, because if not, it's not looking good. Not looking good. Alright, so that's my thoughts on the Los Angeles Clippers. If you enjoyed listening to me talk about this team and you want to hear more, please check out some more of my videos, like and subscribe.